Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We've had a lot of listeners asking about Broadcom's recent performance, especially with the market being volatile lately. So today, we're going to try to give you a clearer picture of what's happening with Broadcom.
Yeah, the semiconductor industry, it's, I'd say, in an interesting spot right now. And the broader market as well, of course.
To put it lightly. So
Yeah.
Broadcom's first quarter 2025 earnings report, they really exceeded expectations, huh?
For sure.
Adjusted earnings per share came in at $1.60. That beat the expected $1.51. And revenue was $14.92 billion. That was above the prediction of $14.62 billion. I mean, those are some pretty impressive numbers, especially with, the market going up and down so much.
They are, yeah. And you got to remember, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, they just had their worst week since September of 2024.
Right.
A lot of the volatility, you can trace that back to President Trump's tariff announcements on China, Canada, and Mexico. And, that uncertainty, it makes investors nervous.
Makes sense. So in this context, Broadcom beating expectations, that's even more impressive. And one area that's got my attention is their performance in AI. They're seeing a ton of growth there.
Yeah, they really are. Their AI revenue, 77% year-over-year increase, reached $4.1 billion.
Wow.
It's a big difference compared to what we're seeing with some of their competitors.
Yeah?
Take Marvell Technology. Their stock dropped almost 20% after a weak outlook report.
Okay, so what's driving Broadcom's success in AI? Is it just the AI boom in general, or are they doing something specific that sets them apart?
It's a little more than just, riding that AI wave. Broadcom's been focusing on custom AI chips, their XPUs specifically.
Right.
And these chips, well, they're attracting the big players.
The Googles of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Google, Amazon, Microsoft. These hyperscalers, Broadcom already has 3 of them using their XPUs and 4 more coming. Estimates are it could bring in something like $60 to $90 billion in revenue by 2027.
That's a big number. So can you explain why these hyperscalers are going with Broadcom's XPUs? What's so special about them?
Customization, that's the key here. It's not just about having the fastest chips anymore. It's about making chips specifically for the AI workloads that these hyperscalers, they need. And Broadcom is doing a great job meeting those needs. They're not just offering a one-size-fits-all solution.
So they're becoming kind of like partners for these companies that are leading AI development.
Yeah, indispensable partners.
Sounds like a good place to be. But even with all this positive news, Broadcom's stock price, it isn't totally immune to broader market trends.
All right, it's not. Remember, their stock dropped 7% on February 27th.
I do.
After NVIDIA's earnings report. And coincidentally, that was also the day of those tariff announcements from President Trump.
It sounds like investors were reacting to both, company-specific news and, broader market anxiety.
Yeah, probably both.
But even with these drops, Broadcom seems resilient, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. Both NVIDIA and Broadcom saw initial drops, but Broadcom bounced back pretty quick after those earnings came out.
Right.
It suggests a level of confidence from investors, I think, even when the market is, uncertain.
Yeah. Speaking of things that might make investors nervous, there are rumors going around on X about Broadcom maybe losing some revenue.
Right.
Like $2 to $3 billion because a ByteDance custom chip project might get canceled due to U.S. sanctions. Is there any truth to those rumors?
Well, it's important to remember those are just rumors. They're unconfirmed. It hasn't shown up in Broadcom's earnings yet.
Okay.
Even if it is true, the impact might not be right away. We might see it in future quarters, not immediately.
So we have to wait and see. But it does make you think, relying on a single client, even one as big as ByteDance, it could be risky.
It's something investors should definitely think about. Yeah, diversification is always important. But Broadcom, they have a history of adapting, diversifying their business.
Right.
They've made acquisitions like the VMware deal, which has made their software offerings stronger and given them a wider reach.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're becoming more than just a hardware company. This VMware acquisition, was that like a proactive move to, reduce risk? Or was it more about just expanding what they can do?
It's probably a bit of both. The tech world, it's constantly changing, and companies like Broadcom, they have to be, flexible and adaptable to stay ahead.
So for a listener who's trying to understand, what Broadcom's potential is, both in the short term and the long term, What are some key takeaways from what we've discussed so far?
I think first and foremost, Broadcom is performing well. Their first quarter 2025 earnings, they were impressive, especially in AI.
Yeah.
They've got those partnerships with the hyperscalers. Their custom AI chips are in high demand.
So that's a solid foundation for growth, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But what about the recent drop in their stock price? Is that something to be worried about?
Well, it's true their stock price isn't immune to market volatility, but the fact that they bounced back after earnings, that suggests resilience, I'd say. Investors seem to be confident in their long-term prospects.
Of course, like with any investment, there are risks. The semiconductor industry, it's competitive, and there are always those geopolitical things to consider. The ByteDance rumors, even though they haven't been confirmed, remind us that things can change fast.
Absolutely. It's crucial to stay informed, to consider everything. But you don't want to overreact to just speculation. The market, it's driven by, emotions as much as facts. Sometimes the best thing to do is stay calm and reasonable, to navigate the ups and downs.
That's a good point. Before we move on, I want to ask about something. We've talked a lot about Broadcom's strengths, their potential, the risks. But what about the people? The people behind the technology? The engineers, the researchers, the ones driving the innovation.
That's interesting.
We talk a lot about numbers and charts and trends, but we need to remember there are talented and dedicated people behind every successful company pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
I agree, yeah. We often overlook the human element, but it's so important for a company's success in the long run.
So as you continue to evaluate Broadcom, or any investment opportunity, I think it's good to consider not just the financials, but also the people, the culture of innovation, the passion that drives them.
That's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome. Now, we've covered a lot already, but there's still more to talk about. We haven't even talked about the broader market or President Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, lots more to unpack.
We do. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break to continue our look at Broadcom. Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Before the break, we were talking about the people at Broadcom, the engineers and all the innovators. But let's shift gears now and talk about the market, the bigger picture. We mentioned those tariffs from President Trump, but what else is impacting how investors are feeling right now?
Well, inflation is still on people's minds. Even though it's cooled down a little, interest rates are going up, and the Federal Reserve, they're saying they'll keep tightening monetary policy. That's making things harder for the stock market, I think. Investors are more hesitant about growth now.
How's that affecting the tech sector specifically? Are they feeling it more than other industries?
Tech stocks, they're really sensitive to those interest rate hikes. It's because they're often valued on their future earnings. When rates go up, the value of those future earnings goes down, which can lead to, lower valuations.
Well, it's kind of like a double whammy for these tech companies. They face higher costs to borrow and potentially lower valuations. That's got to be hard to deal with.
It definitely makes things more difficult, yeah. But even within tech, there are, some strong companies, resilient ones, like Broadcom, for example.
Right.
They're showing some good earnings growth. They have a plan to, capitalize on the AI boom. They're in a better position to handle things when it gets rough.
That's good to hear. Sounds like they're playing it smart, even with all the uncertainty out there. We talked about their focus on AI. Can we dig a little deeper into who they're competing with in that space? Who are the other big players they're up against?
Oh, that's a good question. You can't talk about AI chips without mentioning NVIDIA. They've been, a big force in the GPU market for years now, and they're doing some big things in AI too. Then there are companies like Intel and AMD. They're investing a lot in AI tech. It's a really fast-moving area, always changing.
So there's a lot of competition, but Broadcom seems to be finding its place with this custom XPU approach. You think that focus on customization will work long-term? Or could they lose out to a competitor with a more general solution?
It's hard to predict the future for sure, but I think their focus on customization, it's smart. They're filling a specific need in the market.
Right.
And they're building those strong relationships with those key players. If they can keep innovating and stay ahead of the trends, I think they're in a good spot.
It's all about knowing where the market's going and being able to adapt, right?
It is, yeah. It's about understanding what your clients need, developing new technology, and always pushing the limits.
That kind of leads into my next question. We discussed those rumors about Broadcom possibly losing revenue from that ByteDance deal. Even though those are unconfirmed, it does highlight the importance of not putting all your eggs in one basket, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Broadcom has made moves to diversify, like we've talked about, but it's a good reminder that any company, even the most successful ones, they can be vulnerable when the market shifts or, when things change in geopolitics.
That's a balancing act, right? Trying to innovate and manage risk at the same time. Chasing growth, but also protecting yourself from the downside.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's something every investor needs to be thinking about. No investment is completely risk-free, but by understanding the potential problems, you can make better decisions.
And for our listeners out there who might be thinking about investing in Broadcom, or any company really, what should they be looking at? Aside from the financial reports, I mean.
I would say look at their history. Look at the management team. Look at how they've innovated in the past, how well they adapt to change. Look at the competition they face.
And what about the people?
Right, absolutely. The people are the heart of a company. Look for companies that can attract and keep those talented people.
Yeah.
Companies that have that culture of innovation and collaboration.
So it's about looking past the numbers, trying to understand the story of the company?
It is. It's about seeing the whole picture, making smart decisions with all the information you have.
I like that. We've covered a lot today. Broadcom's recent performance, their focus on AI, who they compete with, the state of the market, even the human side of things.
Yeah, we've had a pretty thorough discussion.
We have. And we've given our listener a lot to think about. But before we finish up, I want to touch on one more thing. We've talked about Broadcom's potential to grow. But what about the risks? What could stop them from being successful? What keeps you up at night when you think about Broadcom's future?
That's a great question, and it's something all investors should be asking themselves. I think one of the biggest risks for Broadcom is how fast the tech industry moves. What's new and exciting today might be old news tomorrow.
So you have to stay agile, keep innovating to stay in front.
Exactly. Another risk is, the competition in the semiconductor market. It's fierce. They're going up against some really tough companies with a lot of money and a long history of innovation.
It's a constant fight for market share.
It is. And then you have the geopolitical risks, which we talked about earlier. The world is always changing, and those trade tensions, sanctions, political instability, those can all impact a company's profits.
A lot to keep track of. But Broadcom, they seem to be handling it well so far.
Yeah, they are. And I think that's part of why investors are so optimistic about them. They've got that track record of success. They have a vision for the future, and they're making it happen.
It's pretty exciting to see a company that's doing so well on all fronts.
It is. And it shows that even in a market that's volatile, that's unpredictable, there are still opportunities for growth and success.
That's a great thought to end on. Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We spent this episode really getting into Broadcom, from their earnings to their position in the AI chip market.
Yeah, and we've talked about the bigger forces in the market, too, the stuff that affects every company, really. It's been a good conversation.
It has been. But before we wrap up, let's bring this back to you, our listener. You want to know if Broadcom's a good investment right now?
I think that's what we've been trying to do here. Give you the info you need to make a smart decision.
Okay, so, bottom line, what's the verdict? Is Broadcom a buy?
Well, I can't give you any specific advice, financially, but I can say Broadcom has a lot of good things going for it. Their performance lately, it's been great, especially in AI. Those partnerships they have with the big hyperscalers, that gives them a real advantage. And that focus on custom chips, it's really working for them.
They're in a good spot for the future, wouldn't you say?
It seems like it, yeah. But remember, there are always risks. The semiconductor industry, it's super competitive and things can change quickly. And the geopolitical stuff we talked about, like those potential sanctions, that creates uncertainty.
So it's a mixed bag. Potential for growth, but also some risks.
I think that's a fair way to describe most investments, honestly. You have to weigh the potential rewards against the risks, make decisions that match your goals and how much risk you're okay with.
That's a good point. So for our listener, what are some questions they should ask themselves about Broadcom?
I think some good ones are, do I believe in the AI market long term? Does Broadcom's approach that focus on custom solutions, does that fit with how I invest? And am I okay with the level of risk in this industry?
Those are good questions. And ultimately, it comes down to doing your own research, right? Don't just take our word for it.
No, definitely not. Read those reports. Follow the news. Talk to other investors. Come to your own conclusions.
I like that. Investing shouldn't be passive. It's about being informed, understanding the information, and making decisions you're comfortable with.
Right. And remember, the market is always moving. What looks good today might not look so good tomorrow. So stay informed, be flexible, and be ready to adapt.
That's some great advice.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything we can on Broadcom. Hopefully you, our listener, have a better understanding of how they've been performing, their strategy, and their potential as an investment.
We've tried to give you the tools and the information to keep learning.
That's what we're all about here on Investing Talk Podcast. And before we go, we want to hear from you. What do you think about Broadcom? Do you think they're a leader in AI chips? Are you optimistic or pessimistic about their stock? Let us know in the comments.
We always love to hear your thoughts and insights.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Investing Talk Podcast for more discussions on the companies and the trends that are shaping the world of investing.
And don't forget to like this episode and share it with your fellow investors.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Investing Talk Podcast.